Today, on Energy Contact, we move ahead in life only after we've resolved our basic needs for survival. Getting the things we want aren't even in the picture until we get the things we need. And here's a twist. The only way to get everything you want is to let go of everything you have. So I hope your basic instinct is to sit back and relax for the next half hour, because we're getting to the basics of all that right now on Energy Contact. Hello, and welcome to Energy Contact. My name is Joseph Willenbrink. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you to the production staff here in the studio for helping me get my message out to you. Energy Contact is a series I'm presenting to you as a public service. It's about attaining perfect health, growth, happiness, self-improvement, and realizing your full potential. It's designed to present you a new way of seeing yourself, and a new way of seeing the world around you. We're talking about things that have to do with making an energetic contact with yourself internally and with your environment. There's no difference between the body, the mind, the spirit, the emotion, the intellect, the ego. There's no difference between mass and energy. These things are all exactly the same. There is something about us that just loves to categorize and classify, separate, dissect, take one little piece out, put it under a microscope, and think we understand everything. But in fact, all that health and self-improvement we're talking about take place when we do just the opposite. It happens when we put these things together. It happens when we make an energetic contact between the physical world and the unseen one. We're presenting on these programs a brand new paradigm that's thousands of years old. We're presenting extraordinary topics for ordinary people. And let's move right ahead with that. Let's bring up a slide. Everyone please understand that I am not a doctor. This show is not a medical show, medical help show, medical advice show, medical talk show, anything like that. Could not be further from it. Now, I call myself a energy healer, chakra healer, things like that. So might a lot of other folks. But state, federal, and local governments absolutely do not. They call me no such thing, and it's important to understand that. There's a lot of important things on your screen right now that you're looking at. Please read all of that, if you will, with your full attention. But when you've got it down, now would be a great time to locate a pencil and paper. And here's why you want to do that. At the end of this program, we're going to run some credits. And on those credits, there's going to be contact information for me. Now, I invite and encourage you to contact me. I'm sort of hoping that something I have to say to you today might inspire you to want to do that. But in order to contact me, you're going to need that information. And in order to get it, you're going to have a pencil handy. So please locate that now. All right, let's come up here. Today is episode number 18 of Energy Contact. And if you're tuning in for the first time today, well, thank you. Thanks and welcome. These shows are sequential. They build. So we're talking about things today that we've introduced and defined and explained previously. So there's some ramp up stuff, some up to speed things that you will have missed out on. However, I do my very best to make sure that every program has a lot of value on a standalone basis. So you'll get plenty out of today's program all by itself. If, however, what you see piques your interest, well then, I'll invite and encourage you to look around, because there will be earlier programs airing at later times, either re-airing right here on this station or on at different days and different times in different areas. And if you look for them, I'll appreciate it. All right, and now it's time for me to introduce my co-host to you. Let me get my buddy Slim on camera here. There's Slim, and Slim is here for a reason. Since we're investigating what it is that the energy contacts in the physical self, we have to know a few things about a few things, don't we? We have to know something about energy. And this is a program all about energy. That's what we're talking about. But all of that energy out there somewhere does us no good at all. It does us no good until we bring it into focus, until we bring it into contact with something. Slim here is here to help us understand what that thing is that the energy contacts. Remember, a body without energy is just a corpse. And energy without a body, well, it might be a number of cool things, but none of them are human. All right, previously on Energy Contact, we have been looking at the body intellect. the body intellect, and the anatomy that it builds. We've seen how all the same materials in our brains that give us thought, reason, recall, memory, logic, intellect, intelligence, we were always told they were brain things. All those little synapses and effectors and receptors and neuropeptides and stuff in there. But in fact, we've seen that they're in every cell of our body, that they permeate, that they saturate every cell of us. We've seen that we are all made of atoms that are all identical. Carbon atom in you is the same as a carbon atom in me, is the same as a carbon atom in a lump of coal, drop of gasoline, whatever. And we're made of cells that are all completely different, like snowflakes. But those atoms, and therefore the cells they build, and therefore you and I, are mostly nothing. We're mostly holes, just big bags of emptiness. In like manner, we all have instincts that are all exactly the same. But we have reactions, the things that we do with those instincts, that are all completely different one from another. Now, we've been talking about primal things, instinctual things, and we've observed what all these facts and body intellects and atoms and cells have to do with our core. Core thoughts, core beliefs, core actions, core values, core everything. We've been looking at that core for quite a while now, and we've seen specifically that that core manages breathing, survival instinct, sexuality, digestion and elimination, the autoimmune system, thoughts and feelings, instincts and reactions, how we process energy, and how we manage our close relationships. And that's just to name a few things. So that core's doing a lot, isn't it? It's a mystical and esoteric place, but it has a physical location. So at the same time, we've learned a bunch about our psoas muscle and our pelvis and our abdomen. It's all there, all those esoteric things there in that bowl of guts and goo that is your low abdomen. There's no difference between any of it and any of it. But it's the psoas muscle, as we've seen, that manages it all. Now your doctor or your shrink or your energy healer might not know that, but now you do. And that brings us to today. Today, we're staying with our basic needs and primal instincts, but we're going to take a very different view of it. If the core manages all of these functions, we want to figure out what comes first. How do we determine, for example, when to survive and when to digest? What sets the priorities? How do we allocate our energy? We've been talking about our core, but that means there must be non-core things. What are they, and how do we ever expect to get to them? If instincts are all the same, what is it that makes different people manage their core priorities so differently? Well, if you've been watching Energy Contact, you know that we can find the answers to these questions, at least to some degree, just by looking at our bodies. And while we are all different, what we're looking at today are some of the things that are the same in all of us. All right, so that's where we're headed. But first, we've reached the part of the program where we get to stop for a second and take our virtual field trip, our journey in our mind's eye. And for today's virtual field trip, we are going to put you through some changes. Are you ready? Before we begin, I'd like you to take just a moment, if you will, and think about how your life is right now. Your family, your work, money, the joys, the heartbreaks, the things that harm you, the things that heal you. Think about the cares and worries that dominate your life, the daily grind, the daily struggle. Think about what it is that just gets you from day to day. All right, you got a good picture of that? Now, hang on, here goes. Visualize that you've just won the lotto. Oh, hallelujah. All of a sudden, things are a little bit different, huh? The priorities have changed. You're not worried about those things anymore. Just like that, all of your needs are met. Imagine a few days later after you've won the lotto, the mail comes in and you start looking at the bills, and there it is, the gas bill, car payment, parking ticket. Brother, you don't care. It doesn't matter. Because you are liberated from that daily grind of survival, you have time to work on some other things, don't you? You're the kind of person that watches Energy Contact, so perhaps you're working on your spiritual evolution. Maybe you're meditating, praying, doing some yoga, eating organic foods. Why didn't you eat organic foods before? They cost too much. You couldn't afford them. Now, because you're a good person, you're also doing some other things, maybe giving back, giving to some charities, helping others. But you're also taking time to enjoy some of the finer things in life for yourself. Good. You're doing the right thing. You deserve it. But look out. Here comes another change. One day you're out on your new boat, your new yacht perhaps, and you're just staring out, leaning over the railing, and the boat hits a snag. It jerks, it lunges somehow, and all of a sudden, you're over the edge. And then you're dazed when you hit the water, and when you come to, you realize you're underwater. And now, all of a sudden, you realize that you can't figure out where the surface is, and you're tumbling downward. Oh my goodness, you're drowning. Wait a minute, what happened to all your noble thoughts? All of a sudden, you've stopped thinking about your investments, your evolutions, feeding the orphans. You're not thinking any of that. All you're thinking of is one thought. Oh God, please, just one breath, just one gulp of air. And then, you're not even thinking about that. Now, gripped by the worst terror and fear and anger and agony and hysteria that you've ever felt in your life, all of your money and power, all that new money and power you have, they're just useless. And you start to black out. And just as you do, you feel a little tug at your shoulder. Next thing you know, you're coming to at your days. You don't really know what's up, but you're afraid to open your eyes because you're wondering, wait, am I in the great hereafter? But you do open them, and no, you're not. You're in a Coast Guard vessel, and there's some dude lurking over you who's been giving you mouth to mouth. And after you get your eyes to unblur and you belch out a quart or two of water, you just reach up and hug the guy. As soon as you're able, you get up, and now you're just dancing around the ship, just trotting around. You're liberated by joy just to be alive. At this point, you don't know if you've won the lotto or not. You don't know any of that stuff. You're not even there. It's not even in the picture yet. All you know is that you're alive, and you're delighted to be that way. All right, hold that thought. We've been looking at our core for the past number of programs, and we've seen that there is a hierarchy, a system of priorities in the way that you manage things, in the way that that core manages things. You're prioritizing every second of your life, and consciously, you don't really even realize it. You can live without food for a number of weeks. You hear about people who go on 40-day fasts, things like that all the time. But you can only live without water for a couple of days. Thirst is a more primal need than hunger. But even if you've been without water for a couple of days, if somebody runs up to you and puts you in a chokehold and you can't breathe, you will stop thinking about your thirst completely until your more basic need is met. Nothing else matters. These are core needs, and even the most primal needs, as you can see, they have a priority system to them. At some level, we've always known this. Certainly the old yogis and mystics and shamans and those folks knew it centuries and centuries ago. But it was a 20th century researcher who studied it all closely and spelled it out for us. His name was Abraham Maslow. Maslow took this very simple idea about how we set our priorities, and from it, he developed his famous priority of needs. His hierarchy of needs, it's called sometime. Who is Abraham Maslow? Well, he is a psychologist whose career was at its peak, at its height in the 50s and the 60s. He was brilliant. He was raised poor and got wealthy himself. He started off working with monkeys, which he saw as being not much different than you and I. And you may have studied him in school, regardless of what your major was. Now, Maslow did not come up with anything new. He would have told you that himself. The knowledge of all this stuff is intuitive and it's thousands of years old. But somehow, this knowledge, at least in a specific sense, got lost. It got lost somewhere in the darkness between René Descartes and the Industrial Revolution. Well, Maslow brought it back. Brought it back to the light and stated it clearly and eloquently and in a way that the Western analytical mind could understand. Let's bring up a slide. We'll get a little of Maslow's wisdom here. Maslow said this: "To the man who only has a hammer, everything he encounters begins to look like a nail." Think about that. That's profound. It's one of the most profound statements that you'll ever hear on Energy Contact, perhaps anywhere. Let's come back up here and let's reset. We've been talking about our abdomen lately. What's that have to do with Abraham Maslow and his need hierarchy? Maslow may not have even known that he had a psoas muscle, but he understood that we have a core. Core needs, core thoughts, core values, core actions, core everything. Maslow understood that we couldn't think about high-minded ideas like world peace, not if we were hungry or not if we were lonely, if we were unable to meet our needs to survive. So we're looking at Maslow's hierarchy in a little bit of detail today. And then we're going to add a new perspective to it, something that perhaps Maslow didn't even know himself. We're going to see what his understanding of the priorities of need have to do with what we've been investigating, with the physical anatomy of our core. What is it in us that sets up these priorities that Maslow discovered? Well, it's the body intellect. But hold on, let's take a look at this thing on your screen right now. First, we want to start right at the bottom of that pyramid. Well, almost. We're going to start at that yellow stripe where it says physiological needs. Our physiological needs are the most basic things in us. They're oxygen or breathing, water, food, shelter, warmth. Beyond that, there's the needs to be active, to rest, to sleep, to get rid of body wastes. Beyond that, to avoid pain, and beyond that, to be sexual. That's all in that bottom stripe. So you can see that there are layers, even within these layers. If these needs aren't met, you don't think of anything else. For a trivial but a typical example, let's think, for example, if you're out somewhere and you have to go to the bathroom and you're out in some public place and there's not one around. At first, that thought just sits in the back of your mind. But as time goes on, if you don't find a bathroom, it moves up your priority list, doesn't it? And after a while, if no place makes itself available to you, that's all you can think of. Your thoughts will become dominated just by finding a restroom somewhere. All sorts of things we never think about are all managed right at that physiological level of Maslow's need hierarchy. Only after these needs are met do we move along. And so let's us move along here. When the physiological needs are largely taken care of, that second layer that you see on your screen comes into play. And we become involved with our safety and security. Now at this level, you will become increasingly interested in finding safe circumstances, stability, protection. You'll start to develop a need for structure, for order. You will be concerned not with items like hunger or thirst, but for things beyond that. For most of us, this set of needs manifests itself primarily in the form of our desire to have a safe home, in a safe neighborhood, maybe a little job security, a little savings account, retirement funds, some insurance, things like that. But for most of the world, and throughout much of history, that's not the case. All right, we'll move on again. When the physiological needs and the safety needs are by and large taken care of, a third layer starts to show up. We start to feel the need for friends, a sweetheart, children, affectionate relationships in general, bonding, a sense of community. When you get stuck here, you become increasingly susceptible to loneliness, social anxieties. But remember, if you can't breathe, these thoughts don't even cross your mind. Now here in the first world, we exhibit these needs in our desires to marry, to have a family, to be a part of a community, a member of a church, a member of a club, a part of a gang, something like that. The bowling league, the motorcycle gang, whatever. It's also a part of what we look for in a career, a working community we can get along with. Next, after that, we start to look for a little respect. That's the next level on the pyramid there. Now Maslow noted two versions of esteem needs, a lower one and a higher one. The lower one is the need for the respect of others, the need for status, fame, glory, recognition, attention, reputation, appreciation, dignity, even dominance. The higher form comes from the need for self-respect, things like confidence and competence, achievement, mastery, independence, and freedom. Now note that this is the higher form because once you have self-respect, once you have self-esteem, it's much, much harder to lose that. Now the lack of fulfillment in this area brings things like low self-esteem, inferiority complexes, things like that. Right here, as a society, is the root of most of our neuroses and complexes and things like that. But if you watch a National Geographic special about impoverished peoples in barren lands, you do not hear them speak about how they're in therapy because their mother never praised their art projects as a child. Most of us here in the industrialized world, we have what we need. We have all of our physiological and safety needs met for the most part. Some love and belonging too. It's a little respect. It's at the esteem level where we get caught. It paints a pathetic portrait of us though, doesn't it? We're all going around like doorstep babies trying to find somebody who will tell us that we're not awful, that we're worthwhile, that we're lovable somehow. And we seem to need that constantly. And so being here and being stuck here, it's not enough to keep us well. It's not enough to give us that health, growth, happiness, self-improvement, and the realization of our full potential that we're looking for. Far from it. When we're stuck here, growth stops here. Now remember, these things are all instinctual. They're the same in all of us. Yet somehow we reflect their effect in different ways. And here's something else. Even if you are up at the esteem level of that pyramid, you're really in no better shape than if you're stuck down at the bottom of the bottom. Why? Because all four of these levels are deficit needs, as Maslow called them. If you don't have enough of something, you feel a deficit. But if you get all you need, you feel nothing at all. In other words, they cease to motivate you, but there's no sense of satisfaction. There's no sense of accomplishment to them. They're very temporal, very ephemeral. So it's not the addition of a positive when you're down here. It's the removal of a negative. It's stopping what hurts. And it's why people want the doctor to give them a pill. It's just a way to remove the negative, to be numb. What this deficit business shows us is that most of us are not trying to get ahead. You think you're trying to get ahead, but perhaps you're not. You're just trying to get back to zero. Remember when you fell off that boat? You're just trying to get back to the surface, get a little air, fill the hole, fill the empty place, scratch the itch. And even though we're all in the same boat, pun intended, a million different people, all equipped with the same instincts and all corresponding to the same Maslow pyramid, will all manage that and all prioritize that in different ways. It's what makes us all different. We become more and more different the higher we climb up that pyramid. If you think about it, down there in the basic survival area, we're pretty much all the same. Now this explains something very important. It explains why even if you do win the lotto, if you haven't moved beyond that level, you're not going to be any less miserable. The things that you're worried about will just be replaced by other things to worry about. The worry is not a function of what's going on outside you at all. It's a function of the misery you seek. Sounds a little harsh, but it's true. That's why so many lotto winners end up having bad experiences, bad lives. You ever seen the follow-up stories on lotto winners? They're not that rosy. It's why millionaires and powerful people and successful actors that you look up to one day try to kill themselves. As soon as they stop worrying about the things that you have to worry about, they just start worrying about something else. They become preoccupied with that. As long as you are on the deficit part of this pyramid, and as you've seen, that's 99% of it, you're the same as at the same miserable level as anyone else anywhere else on it. The only way out, there's only one way out, and that's to move up. And somehow, all this is all connected to something else. Let's bring up another slide, and we'll see something we've seen recently, our psoas and our pelvis. What does that have to do with Abraham Maslow? Well, let's construct this pyramid in another way. The most important thing we have to do is breathe, and that's managed by the psoas in conjunction with the diaphragm and with the help of the intercostal muscles. Then we think of water and food. Digestion is a pelvis action. Our most primal and life-sustaining thing is the survival instinct, which we usually experience as fear. Beyond air and water and food is fight and flight and freeze. And then comes shelter and warmth, and all that's managed by the abdominal muscles, particularly that psoas you see on your screen there, which controls all those basic responses to fear. After that, our next most important primal endowment is our sexual energy, which is managed by our psoas and the muscles of the pelvic floor, as is that digestion we just spoke about, and even the way we relate to other people. Then In order to move, we have to have a functional structure, and the psoas manages that. So let's come back up here. There's other things that we're leaving out, but you get the picture. And other than the psoas and the pelvis, where are they managed? Well, they're managed right on Maslow's need pyramid. And since I mentioned that, let's go back, let's view that pyramid again, because we left out something very important. We left out the best part. You see that space that separates that top triangle there? If you can make that quantum leap up across that empty space there, you will arrive at something called self-actualization. When we talk about realizing your full potential, we talk about self-actualization. We've arrived at being needs. Now, being needs really aren't needs at all. Maslow called them that for continuity, and so will we. But if you are here, if you make it here, well, congratulations. You've made it up to zero. You've made it back to the surface. Remember that boat? You're not drowning anymore. Let's come back up here. In fact, unlike deficit needs, which we want to make go away, our goal is to make them go away, being needs are likely to become stronger and stronger the more we feed them. It's the continuous desire to fulfill potential. Here, you finally become a little less like Maslow's monkeys, a little less animal-like, and a little more godlike in very tangible ways. You're not just a hammer anymore. You're differentiated. You're doing better things. Now, as long as you're down on the bottom, you're sort of stuck. You get confused over the priority of needs. And now you know why there's no world peace. Most people are in no situation to work for world peace. They're down there just trying to get by, and they're trying to get what they need from you. Almost nobody's high enough on the pyramid to pursue things like that. And when somebody gets there, somebody usually shoots them. All of these deficit needs that we viewed on the pyramid are all zero-sum game things. When we actualize, we get beyond that. When we transcend the doing needs, we become not a human doing, not a human having, as the old trite statement says, but we truly become a human being. We can finally begin to address who we are. Now, there's only one way to transcend need. A lot of people think they transcend need by going around it, but we have to go right through it. Painkillers and symptom relievers won't give us there. That core, that pyramid, is a holy, spiritual, anatomical place. Old mystics knew it, Maslow knew it, and now so do you. And we're going to look more at it next time. But until then, I wish you peace and positive energy and a healthy life in Energy Contact. I'm gonna drive away.